Every 60 seconds, there are 500 hours of video uploaded onto YouTube. There are 65,000 posts on Instagram, and there are 3.3 million new Facebook posts that are made. This is the ecosystem that we all find ourselves within, struggling to be seen and heard, regardless if we're an artist, an entrepreneur, or a company. So I quit my job as a mining engineer in 2012, and I threw myself headfirst into this industry trying to figure out what to do. And along this journey, I learned a few lessons that I was hoping to share with you today. One of the first lessons I learned was that what your parents and your teachers tell you at school to do good work isn't actually enough. Because if you do just exactly what you're supposed to, you're going to end up like everybody else. So an example of the type of work that I was doing when I first started out was something like this. It was technically correct. So anyone who knows photography would be the rules of third. It was well lit. We had interesting characters. We built the costumes ourselves. But at the end of the day, I was getting likes on Facebook, likes on Instagram, but it didn't really go very far. And why? One of the reasons, I think, is because when you try to describe this photograph to a friend, you say 3 tree people on a tree. It's not very interesting. Another example of that, we have here one of my favorite photos that I have ever taken in my portfolio. Same problem. We have a bird lady on a rock. Doesn't really capture the whole story that comes into it. It doesn't capture enough attention, and so you'll get a lot of likes, but it won't spread. So what is it that makes something spread? How do you get noticed? That's a question that I asked myself a long time, and I didn't really know the key to it until I stumbled across it by mistake when I decided to tie a model 30 meters underwater in a shipwreck in Bali. So this photograph is not any technically better than anything else. It's well exposed, we have rule of thirds, we have nice colors, just like the other photos. But the fact that I tied a model 30 meters underwater is interesting, even before I show you the photograph. And now that you've seen the photograph, it's even more interesting. You want to know how it's done. And so now I can share this story with you on how we took this photograph, on how I got my dive license the day before, on how this whole project was put together in 1 week. And that's when it becomes even more interesting, even more engaging. That's where the magic happens. But first, you need people's attention. All right, another example. We put superheroes on the edge of a 40-story skyscraper. Wait, which superhero? 40 stories? Are they tied in? Is it real? This is the type of conversation you want to create around the headline, and then the work just becomes the accessory to it. Now you can look at it, you can love it, you can hate it, it doesn't matter. Actually, it's good if some people like it and some people don't, because that creates conversation. But at least people are talking about it. So this is the type of work that I was doing. Now, the takeaway from this is that virality really lies in the headline. You need to think of the title of your project. If you don't know how to describe your own work or what you are doing in a really cool sentence that people will want to click on, nobody's going to do that job for you. Right? So I wanted to give you a little bit of an example on what that actually looks like in practice. So I did this photo series for a company called SmugMug. They had just opened a brand new gym, and they wanted photographs of their employees looking badass, showing off their muscles. So we have the CEO, we have his wife, we have marketing dude. And so we built this rain machine out of $50, and I put it online, and I called it the $50 trick to epic portraiture, because I was using sprinklers and PVC pipes to create this whole thing. And it did pretty good. Photographers really liked it. They wanted to know what the trick was, the $50 trick was. But the rest of the world really doesn't care, right? Because the rest of the world doesn't have that many photographers. So we rethought this campaign. We decided to relaunch it a second time, just for fun. And this time around, we decided to focus on 2 different things. First, it wasn't about the photographs. It was about the transformation from ordinary person to extraordinary person. That was the first thing. The second thing is we retargeted the timing. We launched it on New Year's. Why New Year's? Because New Year's is when everyone takes their New Year's resolutions to go to the gym. And then this time around, we launched it, and we called it Ordinary People, Hollywood Budgets. And it's the comparison, side by side, of these ordinary people transformed that was really interesting. Suddenly there was a discussion, blogs, health blogs picked it up, all these different people picked it up. There was a debate, slight controversy over whether you should go to the gym or just hire a photographer instead. You know, all these different things came about as a result of this project. So just changing that headline, just changing the framework of the same work made a world of difference. So as a result of all this work that I was doing, I finally started getting paid. This was the largest campaign of my career. We shot this with a cell phone for a company called Huawei. They make phones. And they had a new light painting feature they wanted to feature, and they wanted the most badass photo possible. As a result, I got paid, which was great, and my face ended up on the side of all these banners across the world and airports and all that. And I ended up being very disappointed. All my life, or ever since I quit my job, the dream was to get paid to do what I do best, get paid to do what I love, take pictures, challenge myself, travel the world. But finally, when I was creating this work, when I was getting paid the money, all that I was doing was creating something that was going to move product off a shelf. It was going to be forgotten in a few weeks, maybe months, because it was a novelty item. It was just like, hey, look at me, I did something cool, and then gone. Because it didn't have any more resonance in that, had no soul. And so I started to think about it. I was like, all right, I want to do something that has a little bit more purpose and meaning in life. I just didn't really know where exactly to start. So I started thinking back to the different types of projects that I had done in my life that really struck me, that I really enjoyed. And so I thought about this project I did for a little girl. Her name is Eliza. She was 4 years old, dying of a terminal degenerative brain disease. Her father reached out to me, complete strangers on the internet, and just saying like, hey, we have this one chance to save my daughter. If we can raise a lot of money in a very short amount of time, we're looking at $1 million in a few months, $2 million over the course of a year. And I was like, well, I'm not a videographer, I'm a photographer, but I know how to tell stories. And this sounds like a fun challenge. I have nothing to do. Let's go try to raise $1 million. And so I flew myself there, stayed on the sofa for 10 days, made a video to tell the story of how these parents were losing their daughter. Their daughter, who was 4 years old, was losing the ability to walk, to talk, to speak, to eat, and she was going to die in her teenage years. And I told that story in the best way that I could, and at the end of the day, we raised $1 million in a month, and we raised $2 million over the next few years. And this piece of content has nothing to do with what I do, but even today, 3 years down the line, it is still the most useful video that they have to explain what they are going through. It didn't just fade off into nothingness. It's still a valuable piece of content. And so I wanted to do that. But you'll notice that this work has nothing to do with my photography. And so I really wanted to figure out a way to combine the two together. So it took me a little while, but I eventually got to it. This is one of the projects I did where I tried to tackle plastic pollution. So here is a mermaid on 10,000 bottles. Now, before talking about this too deeply, I just want to share with you the actual process on what it looks like. It's a quick little video.
How do you get people to talk about something that is ordinary, ugly, and boring? I wasn't too sure, but from experience, I know that the internet loves to see things that are extravagant, unique, and different. So applying that same concept to plastic bottles, having 10,000 of them seemed like a great start at making something ordinary into something extravagant. With more plastic than fish in the sea scheduled for 2050, it made sense to add an ocean component to the project. A sea of plastic was interesting and sad, but it needed something unique and beautiful to truly stand out. What more unique and beautiful to represent the ocean than a mermaid? And so with the help of a waste management center called Tomra and a local artist called Cynthia, we ended up with 10,000 plastic bottles that came in a 50-foot truck, along with a beautifully designed, handmade mermaid tail. This unexpected combination, I felt, had the potential to be something truly different. So with all three components to make things shareable, the extravagant, the unique, and the different, I felt like we had all of the ingredients necessary to create something that could potentially make the boring topic of plastic pollution more shareable. As the shoot deadline creeped forward, dozens of volunteers joined us in our quest, contributing whatever they could, from helping us clean and delabel thousands of bottles, to rigging up my camera to the ceiling with plywood and pulleys, to borrowing a 52-inch TV from Costco. For the mermaid, talented artists came together to transform our beautiful model into a believable mermaid. And before I knew it, all the pressure was on me, waiting to see if the concepts would work or just be flushed down the drain. As the day flew by, volunteers worked tirelessly, pushing bottles around, collecting them, organizing them by color before tossing them right back out onto the floor to create a new set of patterns that some crazy photographer had told them to do. Slowly but surely, an extravagant, unique, and different series appeared, just like I had hoped. But deep in the back of my mind, one nagging thought remained. How much difference could a series like this possibly make in encouraging people to stop using plastic bottles? Honestly, I'm not sure, but I guess I'm about to find out.
So this video currently sits at over 35 million views on Facebook. And the beauty of it is that it keeps growing. Why does it keep growing? Why doesn't it just fade away? It doesn't fade away because it is talking about a real-world problem. It is trying to solve something that is actually going to last our lifetime, the lifetime of our children, and the lifetime of their children. It's going to keep going on. And so in some way, the work inherits a lot of that legacy, right? So it gets viral, but it stays. It survives the test of time. And so I don't want to spend this whole time talking just about me. I actually have 3 points that I want you guys to take away that I think could be possibly interesting. The first, if you're interested in getting a little bit more involved in the impact space, is that you have to make a commitment. It's never going to be easy to decide to add more rules to your life, to pay attention to the negative things in your life and say, I'm going to try to do something about it. It's going to suck. And it's not going to be fun. But if you stick to it, at some point it will work. So when I decided that I wanted to do impact work, I gave myself a year, extended it to 2. I'm on my 2nd year now of only doing impact work. And so when my girlfriend told me, hey, Ben, I want to go storm chasing. It'll be fun. Let's take some pictures. It'll be cool. I'm like, I don't want to do that. What's the point of going storm chasing if I'm just going to take pretty photos? I want an impact. And she's like, oh, what about climate change? That's a big problem. I'm like, okay, let's do a project where we have a big storm in the background to symbolize climate change with a person in the front ignoring what's happening behind them. It's not my best work. The message is even a little bit muddy, but it got me on the right path to see that it is possible to do fantasy and impact at the same time. I didn't know it was going to work until I started. The second thing I want you to try is to focus on you, yourself, what you can do. It is too easy to say, oh, here in my country, we don't do things this way, or I was not born rich enough to do this, or I have kids I can't do. Okay, that's fine. That is the world that you live in, that we all live in. We each are born with our sets of constraints. But then there is you and what you can do about it. Where are you in life today, and what can you do with that in where you are? And so this project, for example, we took in Fiji, tied a model underwater because it works, and waited for sharks to swim around, for shark conservation. I wanted to create a shark shepherd. Now, I only arrived in Fiji because I was teaching a photography class. I couldn't buy my own plane ticket to go there. I went on the internet and I'm like, hey, I need some models. Anyone want to fly down? So the model flew herself in. I had this concept, but I didn't know if it was going to work, so I bought this shepherd's crook on Amazon for $20 that we brought up. And once I landed there, that's when I started reaching out, trying to find a group of divers that would help support this project. And we did, 3 days before the shoot again. But that all started with what I could do, right? I don't think about all the things that I would like to do that I can't do because I'm stuck here. I think about what I can do from here and take one step forward, take another step forward. And the third and last thing is to take little risks, just little, 10%. If you know how to do a campaign, do it a little bit more risky. Try to take that next step forward. If I know how to put a model on the edge of a 40-story skyscraper, I should put the model over the edge. Why not, right? But what is interesting about this project is also the client. So the client in this case was Nike. They wanted me to create a series that represented their shoes, lighter than air, running. And I said, well, that would be cool, but what's the impact component? They're like, can't you just think about it as a job and then use your money and go do the things you care about? I'm like, I don't want to spend 90% of my life doing work I don't want to do to spend 10% of my life doing work I do want to do. Can we put the two together? And so we negotiated back and forth, and they took a risk too. They took a 10% risk and said, okay, we won't use influencers this time, we'll use social entrepreneurs. And so that's them taking a little bit of give too. So I took a stance, they gave a little bit of give. Everyone has a role in this equation, and that's how really great things happen. And so the last thing I want to end on, because this whole talk was supposed to be about virality, and it is, because you need virality in order to succeed in some way. But virality in and of its own is a trap. Because if you're just getting likes for the sake of likes, if you're just getting comments for the sake of comments, you're also going to create content that has no value, that has no purpose. But if you pursue legacy instead, you will need virality to survive, and from there you can also make the world a better place. So if that's something you're interested in talking about, just feel free to send me a message on Instagram, send me an email, I'd love to help you out. Thank you.